Ranking every LMG in Warzone with 300 health. Welcome back, I'm Austin, and starting with the Star 63, this one's going to go straight into the viable tier. It used to be a meta weapon, but they did nerf its recoil quite a bit, so now it does kick a little bit too much, even though the TTK is still solid. Now the RPD is a weapon that actually benefits from the extra 50 health for each player over on Caldera, so it's going to go into the competitive tier, because this thing is an absolute beam with really low recoil, and it still has a very competitive time to kill that lines up with a lot of the top-end assault rifles within the game. Now, the MG82 I didn't have a picture of, so I went with the M82 because it's basically the same thing, and this one's going straight into competitive as well, but kind of for the opposite reason of the RPD. It has an elite TTK, but it does have quite a bit of recoil, but it's only vertical, which makes it a little bit easier to control because you only got to pull back on your analog stick or back on your mouse. So if you can control this vertical recoil, it's going to be very, very good for you. Now the M60, there's really nothing I can say about this other than it is complete garbage. It has one of the worst mobilities in the entire game. It's the worst LMG. It has a really bad time to kill, plus not good accuracy, and the slowest fire rate among all LMGs. So literally this thing is just bottom tier in every single category. Never used this weapon, don't know why they never buffed it. Now we're going over to Modern Warfare LMGs because the Cold War ones are done. There's only 4 of them. So the M91 is kind of like the M60, except for it isn't complete garbage and will go into the viable tier. I'm going to be honest, I haven't used this one in a while, but when I actually looked up the stats of it, the time to kills were actually fairly competitive against other weapons, and the recoil isn't bad, but the mobility is very slow in comparison to some of the top-end LMGs. Now the Fin is going into competitive as well, and I would actually put this above the MG82 and the RPD because for one, it is super accurate like the RPD, but it has an elite time to kill like the MG82 if you put on the correct barrel. The one, actually I should say there's 2 cons to it. The mobility is bad, and then the second con is that the damage per mag is really, really low. But you can also build this in a way that I would consider to be niche, and that's if you make it like the chainsaw variant where you can only hip fire. It's really fun to use on Rebirth, but over in Caldera, which we're ranking right now because of the 300 health, the Fin is an absolute beam, as well as has a really good time to kill, but you can't use it in trios or quads because the damage per mag is too low. The War LMG, this is an LMG that I absolutely hate, but it's definitely viable. I would just never use it personally over these other weapons because the mobility, once again, for an LMG isn't good. I know I'm saying mobility a lot, but there are certain LMGs coming up that actually have some good aim down sight speed and some good sprint to fire for the LMG category that are more like assault rifles rather than LMGs. And speaking of which, the PKM, this is my favorite light machine gun in the game, and I'm throwing it in meta. So this thing, the only con to it is the reload time is really bad. I think it's about 10 seconds when you have on the 100 round clip. So if you really want, you could throw on the 200 round belt so you'd never have to reload. But this thing is really accurate, has a very good time to kill of 800 milliseconds, which is way faster than any assault rifle. The best AR you can get without getting any head or neck shots is the FAR with 835 milliseconds. So therefore the PKM kills faster than all of them. And then your ADS is actually really, really good on this weapon. The main con to it is once again the reload time. If you guys have been enjoying this tier list, make sure to like the video, it really helps me out, and subscribe to see more tier lists, top 10s, and weapon versus videos to help keep you on top of the Warzone meta. Now the Holger 26. I know I said the M60 was the worst, but the Holger 26 is a close second with the 300 health. So you're going to have over an 1100 millisecond TTK with this thing at long range, which is where you typically want to use LMGs, and it also isn't good up close. There's no reason to ever use this weapon. The Holger 26 was garbage and still is. The Bruin MK9, this one is going to be sneaking right at the end of the meta. I would say it's a little bit worse than the PKM, but it's better than these other 3. You just can't use the 60 round mag because that makes your recoil a lot worse, and if you want to be able to aim this thing well, you gotta just leave on the 100 round clip. But it has a time to kill that's equivalent to the PKM, it just is a little less accurate, which is why I think it's slightly worse. It also has a little bit worse ADS. The MG34, this thing can actually get a really good time to kill, but the recoil is just uncontrollable in my opinion. I want to put it below average because of that, but technically it could be viable if you can semi-control this thing. It's sort of like the MG82, except for that it's way, way harder to control. So I'll throw it at the end of viable. No, I'm throwing it below average. I take it back just because I personally cannot use this thing at all because of the recoil. Maybe you're better than me, but I'm going to leave it in below average. Now the S87, the last of the Modern Warfare LMGs, is going to go into the end of viable. And the reason it isn't going competitive is because it has the same exact time to kills as the Cold War AK-47, but it has way worse mobility, Plus, I just don't think it's as easy to aim as the Cold War AK, so if you're going to use a weapon like that, go to the assault rifle, not the LMG. The DP-27, I thought this thing was meta when we had 250 health, but it's going to fall down into competitive just because the TTK does get dropped off a bit, but it's still really accurate, and it still has a very viable time to kill, and it has a huge clip of 105 round mag, so therefore it's going to perform very well if you're using it to just hold down positions and lanes. It's still a really good weapon, just not quite as good as the PKM or Bruin. Now for the Bren, this is still meta. I think you guys probably know this because it's still a really widely used weapon, and it's actually the most accurate of every single light machine gun. I don't have these other categories ranked in any order, but the top meta, this is how I would put them: PKM, Bren, then Bruin. Technically, PKM and Bren is more of a personal preference. With the PKM, I get a really good damage per mag. With the Bren, I only have the 40 round one. But the movement stats are better on the PKM across the board, minus the reload, and then the time to kill is about 30 milliseconds better than the Bren, but the Bren has slightly better accuracy and the better reload time because it's only a 40 round clip to get the good TTK. But either way, this is sort of like the ultimate low skill weapon right here. If you're a noob, just use the Bren, you're going to be able to hit all your shots with it, and it still has a very competitive TTK, even if it's slightly worse than the PKM. Now for the Type 11, this LMG doesn't get used nearly enough, and it's going to sneak into the top of competitive, and I'm going to tell you why. You guys remember when the Bren had a barrel that had unlimited damage range where it never fell off? So you got the close range TTK out to infinite ranges, so you could be 200 meters out and you're still going to be killing people in 600 milliseconds back in the day. The Type 11 still has that barrel on it, and it's never been nerfed, and I'm going to tell you why. It's because no one uses this thing, but the one con to it is you have to use the 45 round mag to get its good time to kills. But either way, you get infinite range on this thing, and you can make the recoil pretty low, not quite as accurate as the Bren or the PKM, but the Type 11 is super underrated and underused. Now if we go to the MG42, this is going to go into the top of viable. I almost want to throw it in competitive, but the reason I'm not going to is because the MG42 has like the lowest damage per bullet among any light machine gun, although you can get the fire rate to over 1100 just by changing the magazine, which is what you should do because it gets you the better TTK, but in 300 health, it's going to take you like 17-18 bullets to kill someone, so the damage per mag is still really bad, even though you're going to have over 100 bullets in your clip, but it's really accurate, easy to aim, and super forgiving because of the fire rate. And now the Whitley I don't have an image of, so I'm going to call the 1911 the Whitley, and I don't know whether to put it at the bottom of viable or the top of below average. I think I'm just going to throw it in below average because I would never use it over any of these other LMGs. The Whitley is pretty accurate, but you don't have a really good time to kill, and you don't really have any mobility advantages over these other ones, so there's just no reason to use it. And if you want to see all the SMGs ranked, I'll have it linked right here. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.
Live ping, live ping, live ping.
Over. Get it done.
Oh, not bad.
Closing in. Relocating the zone. Oh, mission accomplished.